Well, Dennis, we live in a knowledge economy where the predominant factor of the economy today is largely driven by information and the trading of data and so on and so forth. And as such, I think we need to be more aware than we ever have done before about how we consume information and knowledge from various different sources around us. How and why should a young person today who already is a digital native, but how should they become perhaps more aware in terms of how they receive information from various sources, whether it's information about the broader picture of what's going on in our culture and in the economy, or just information that pertains to them in their specific field or even their company?
Great question. Anybody that I have any influence upon, certainly my grandchildren, people, just people that are friends. I cannot overemphasize enough the absolute necessity of going through worldview schools. Again, to some degree, that's what we are here in Doing Business God's Way is a worldview school. It's built on the biblical presuppositions and biblical extraction of Scripture and application, both on a foundational level in terms of soteriology, salvation, etc., but also on specific examination of the Scripture relative to stewardship and the management of people, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I say that is my worldview is the foundation out from which I relate to reality. And I need to be, this sounds really educated, epistemologically self-conscious, which basically means I know what I know how I learned it, I know where I got it from, and I'm learning how to use it so that my knowledge base is not just theoretical or abstract. My knowledge base is increasingly becoming practical and applied. So that is square one for anybody, hopefully parents, through pastors or programs, any of you that want to further contact you, you know the worldview schools and stuff that we would direct your friends to. That's number one, absolutely critical, because the information is going to be sifted through my worldview, and as it's being sifted, I'm evaluating, is this source reliable? Are there presuppositions biblical? Is there counsel in the way of the Lord, so to speak? Secondarily, the issue of who are my close friends. I've always wanted to be connected with people that read, whether it's books or, savvy on the web, savvy on research, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an answer, a short answer, is make sure that you have a grounding in biblical worldview, and there's a lot of good stuff. And secondly, surround yourself with people that read and who are reliable in what areas they recommend you to use as source material.
Mm. I appreciate that you bring that point up, because I think one of the dangers that we are exposed to more and more with the sheer plethora of information, that information is being targeted to us by certain algorithms depending on what our interests are,
exactly.
Right? Online. And as such, it is very easy to hear you're sounding something, but you're just listening to your own voice, your own interests. You're a part of the echo chamber.
Yeah.
And I think that surrounding yourself with friends, even friends that might even have a different different opinion, but you respect the fact that they think, they read, they observe, and providing you've got that filter, that worldview filter, you're able to assess the degree of truth and the degree of opinion between various different things. Speak to us a little bit about the importance of making sure, you are a well-rounded, well-read individual that's willing to take in, a variety of different points of view.
If you want to lead, read. Readers are leaders, and that is an axiom of truth. Reading, of course, physiologically stimulates. Electronically, I'm not well versed in this, but versed enough to know what I'm talking about. Reading is one of the single most important physiological things we can do to exercise our brain. The same way I exercise, biceps, triceps, pecs, whatever. Reading exercises different parts of our brain, and not only keeps it, the life of the flesh is in the blood, not only keeps a good blood flow to various parts of our brain, it stimulates the capacity to think comparatively. Thinking comparatively is critical. I got a center line of my Christian worldview, which is going to evaluate almost instantaneously any information that I'm acquiring. I will very quickly be able to get a true north, little south, whatever. And then I will be able to assess the information that's coming from the left or the right or somewhere else based on familiarity with the arguments that are both pro and con, the main ideas that I carry, especially in an area where I allegedly have expertise. And I want to make sure that I know, I think Abraham Lincoln is famous for saying, he that only knows his own case has got a poor client. A lawyer that only knows his side of the prosecution. And I think that's really true. And obviously, we've never had the amount of information available to us. I think you've got to be strategic in that. We've never needed to be more strategic, let me put it that way. Never needed to be more strategic than we do now on the use of our informational time. Because we can get murdered with a glut of things that we're interested in, walk away from it, not sure what you got from all that, while at the same time, your own discipline may be evolving quicker and certainly in different areas than you're current with, that you need to be current with in terms of expertise, where you are standing in a place of being somebody that is a standard of truth.
Yeah, I refer to that in some other things as we have an information surplus, but we have an attention deficit.
Well put.
And I think that's part of the problem is that we are getting all this information, but we don't actually know how to focus our attention in such a way that we can articulate what is actually helpful with the information that we're getting, what can be rejected, what can be assimilated or morphed into something completely different.
The name of the game is integration. What do I reject and what do I integrate?
Right. The other part that makes me slightly concerned about where we are today, we've talked about the reality that for us as Christians, we expect that there is going to be worldviews that are being peddled out in the world. Everybody has their assumptions, and they have those assumptions based upon what the kind of agenda they're trying to create. No surprise. The concern I sometimes have is that anytime we see something that has a strong sense of bias, that we automatically label it as fake news. It's got a bias, it must be therefore fake news, as opposed to, well, this angle may have a strong bias that is actually antithetical to what I think. I disagree with it, but it's not necessarily fake news. It's just a very different opinion, but it's still worthy of being considered and having a conversation about.
Yeah, a lot of knowledge is blind men describing the elephant. And that analogy is a good, workable analogy. To the blind men, the elephant is a serpent, it's a wall, it's a tree, it's the tusk it's a horn, whatever. And again, if I'm secure in my center line of what is biblical, that is going to be the evaluator. But if I'm going to be skilled in influencing people, I need to know the pros and the cons of my own arguments.
Yeah.
And I need to know the pros and the cons of their arguments. It's very much like being a boxer, a martial artist, is you have to know what to block, you have to know how to block it, you have to know what is, how to get out of the way, you have to know a multiple set of things. Or a better analogy is, I don't consider myself to really know anything that I can't get into almost from a 360-degree circle of different doorways to get into that discussion. Oh. And somebody that's really skilled in what they know, they're able to get into that discussion on almost any opinion that is given to them. You can go through the door that set of words opens to you in order to start the conversation.
Yeah.
And that idea has been very helpful to me because it makes me pretty secure in the areas that I know what I know, because I haven't heard any door open that I've not been through in terms of getting into that conversation and what the hard facts are in it.
Yeah. And I think that boils back down to, rather than us criticizing the people that we might disagree with because they have a different bias or because they have a completely different opinion.
They can even agree with us, but come into it in a totally different way.
Right, yeah. Instead, maybe we should put the responsibility on ourselves in that, well, what am I not understanding about the truth?
Yeah.
That is making me automatically assume the worst, or making me fearful and saying this must be fake, or I can't trust anything else.
Snap judgments.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And therefore actually discredits my ability to actually have a reasonable conversation with people who do have a different point of view from me.
And as you know, a lot of the stuff we're doing that is social and analytical and worldview, we try and make sure that we use only secular language. If I can't share in secular language a spiritual principle and have to use scripture to do it, I'm not really ready for prime time. I'm not ready to really engage the culture until I don't have to use religious language. I prefer to use their language. I want to speak in their language rather than keeping. Already, if I have to use a certain kind of language that they're not familiar with, there's no way we're going to have the same level of communication that we do if I'm using your words as well as my words.
And that, I think, speaks to the fact that when we're able to do that, we care more about them than we do ourselves.
Absolutely.
I think that's the bottom line here in this. Thank you.